Emily stood quietly in the bright kitchen of her small flat in Bath, holding the small wrapped box tightly in her hands. It was Mother's Day, and she had spent all morning trying to find the perfect gift for her mother. The little gift was something Emily hoped would bring a smile, but her heart fluttered nervously. What if it was not enough? What if her mother did not like it? The thought made her swallow hard. Her daughter, Lily, aged 6, was bouncing around happily. "Mummy, Mummy, look what I made at school," she said, holding out a colorful card filled with drawings and glitter. Emily smiled warmly, reaching down to hug her daughter. The kitchen was filled with the sweet scent of freshly brewed tea and baking, but despite the cheerful morning, Emily's thoughts were troubled. Later that day, they visited Emily's aunt, Margaret. The moment they arrived, Margaret's sharp eyes glanced over the gift Lily was carrying. "That is not for her," Margaret said sharply, taking the gift from Lily's hands without a smile. The room went silent. Emily's heart sank. Lily looked up at her mother with confusion and hurt. "But Auntie, I wanted to give it to Mummy," she whispered. Emily felt a surge of anger and sadness rise inside her. Why did Margaret always try to take control? Why did she have to ruin this special day? Before Emily could say anything, Margaret's voice cut through the tension. "You don't understand, child. That gift is for someone else, someone who deserves it more." Emily stared at her aunt, disbelief and pain mixing in her chest. Who else could Margaret mean? The secret that had been buried for years was about to surface, and Emily knew this Mother's Day would be far from ordinary. The air in the sitting room felt heavy as Emily sat quietly on the faded sofa, clutching Lily's hand tightly. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, casting soft patterns on the worn carpet. Margaret sat across from them, her face unreadable, but her eyes sharp and cold. Emily's mind raced back to the moment Margaret snatched the gift from Lily's hands. She had wanted to defend her daughter, to tell her aunt that the gift was a simple, heartfelt token of love. But something in Margaret's tone had stopped her. It was not just about the gift, it was about something buried deep beneath the surface, something no one had spoken of for years. "Who else could it be for?" Emily asked finally, her voice trembling. Margaret's lips curled into a thin, tight smile. "You don't remember, do you? The one your mother spoke about in whispers, the one she wished to keep secret from the world." Emily's heart pounded. Her mother had died when Emily was very young. There had always been stories, hushed conversations behind closed doors, about a family secret that Emily was never meant to know. But what could it be? And why was it coming up now, on a day meant to celebrate love and family? Lily looked up at her mother, sensing the tension. "Mummy, what secret?" she asked softly. Emily swallowed hard and tried to keep her voice calm. "It's something grown-ups talk about, darling. Something complicated." Margaret leaned forward, her eyes glinting. "Your mother had another daughter, Emily. A daughter she loved, but could never bring into the open." Emily's breath caught. Another daughter? She had never heard this before. How could her mother hide such a thing? Why did she hide it? Emily asked, disbelief mixing with sorrow. "Because the family was afraid. Afraid of what the neighbors would say. Afraid of losing respect. It was a scandal no one wanted to face," Margaret said quietly. Emily looked at Lily and then back to Margaret. "Is this why you said the gift was not for me?" Margaret nodded. "That gift belonged to your half-sister, who is still out there. You see, she was promised something by your mother, a promise that never came." Emily's mind whirled. She had spent her life believing she was the only child, the only daughter her mother had. And now, here was a part of her family story she had never imagined. The clock ticked loudly in the silent room. Emily knew that from this moment on, nothing would be the same. She had to find the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Just then, Lily tugged on her sleeve. "Mummy, can I open the box now?" Emily smiled sadly, and as she reached to unwrap the gift, a loud knock came at the front door. They all froze. Who could it be, arriving unannounced on a day already filled with so much uncertainty? The knock at the door echoed sharply through the old house. Emily rose slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. Lily clung to her side, eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of fear. Margaret watched silently, her expression unreadable but tense. Emily moved toward the door, each step heavy with uncertainty. She opened it to reveal a woman standing on the doorstep, her features unfamiliar but eyes strikingly familiar. The woman's coat was worn, and a scarf wrapped loosely around her neck suggested a long journey. "Good afternoon," the woman said softly, her voice tinged with nervousness. "My name is Sarah. I believe I need to speak with Emily." Emily stared, searching the woman's face for something, anything that might explain this unexpected visit. "How do you know my name?" Sarah hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small worn photograph. She handed it to Emily, who took it with trembling hands. The photo showed a younger woman holding a baby. The baby's face was unmistakably Lily's. But the woman holding her was not Emily. It was Sarah herself, looking younger and softer. Emily looked up, confusion clouding her eyes. "Who is this?" Sarah swallowed hard. "I am your half-sister, Lily's aunt. I've been searching for you both for years." Margaret's face tightened. "That is not possible," she said sharply. "You have no right here." Emily felt the room shift around her. She looked at Sarah, at Margaret, and then at Lily. Her mind was racing, trying to piece together the fragments of the past that had suddenly shattered her world. "Why now?" Emily asked quietly. "Why after all these years?" Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Because your mother left me a message, a promise that I should find you both when the time was right. She wanted you to know the truth about our family." Emily's fingers trembled as she folded the photograph carefully. She wanted to trust Sarah, but doubt and fear tangled in her heart. Lily tugged at her sleeve again. "Mummy, who is she?" Emily bent down to her daughter's level. "She's someone important, sweetheart. Someone who's part of our family story." The afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the room. Emily knew that accepting Sarah meant stepping into a world she had never imagined. A world where secrets were no longer hidden. As the door clicked shut behind Sarah, the quiet house felt alive with the weight of long-buried truths waiting to be uncovered. The following days brought a storm of emotions and revelations. Sarah's presence stirred memories that Emily had long buried, and Margaret's silent resistance grew more palpable with each passing hour. The house, once a place of comfort, now felt like a battleground for truths and lies. Emily found herself caught between loyalty to her mother's wishes and the protective instincts she held for Lily. Sarah spoke cautiously, sharing fragments of a past that seemed both distant and painfully close. "You need to understand," Sarah said one evening as they sat by the fire. "Our mother made mistakes, but she loved us in her own way. She wanted to protect you from certain truths, but she also wanted you to know where you came from." Emily nodded slowly, her mind racing. "What truths? What am I missing?" Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a faded journal. This belonged to her. "It's everything she wrote before she died." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "That journal is dangerous. It contains secrets some would kill to keep hidden." Emily glanced at the worn cover, then back at Sarah. "Why didn't you come before?" Sarah's voice broke. "I was afraid. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of what you might think." Lily played quietly nearby, unaware of the weight pressing down on the adults around her. Her innocence was a fragile light in the gathering darkness. Emily took a deep breath. "We need to read it. We need to know the truth." The pages revealed a story of love, betrayal, and sacrifice. A family torn apart by decisions made in fear and desperation. Emily's heart ached as she read the words of a mother who had fought to protect her children, even from herself. As night deepened, a sudden sound from the hallway startled them all. A shadow moved just beyond the doorframe. Margaret's hand went to her chest, and Sarah's eyes widened. Emily's voice was steady but fierce. "Who's there?" No answer came, only the soft creak of floorboards fading into silence. The house held its breath, waiting for the next secret to emerge from the shadows. The sudden shadow in the hallway was no mere trick of the light. Emily's heart pounded fiercely as she rose from her chair, eyes fixed on the doorframe where the silhouette had appeared. The house, cloaked in silence moments ago, now seemed alive with tension. "Show yourself," Emily commanded softly but firmly, stepping closer. A figure stepped forward, emerging from the dim corridor. It was a man, his face worn and tired, but unmistakably familiar. Sarah gasped quietly, while Margaret's eyes widened in shock. "Who is this?" Emily demanded, feeling a swirl of confusion and suspicion. The man looked at each of them in turn, then fixed his gaze on Sarah. "It's been a long time," he said quietly.
I didn't know if I'd ever be welcome here again.
Sarah's face paled. David? You came back. Margaret's expression hardened. What are you doing here at this hour? David took a slow step inside, carrying a small envelope in his hand. I have something to show you all. Something that might explain why everything fell apart. Emily felt her breath catch. This stranger, this man from her mother's past, might hold answers to the mysteries that had haunted her for years. He handed the envelope to Sarah, who unfolded it carefully. Inside were photographs and letters, all yellowed with age but clearly connected to the journal Emily had read.
These letters are from your father, David said quietly.
He wanted to make things right. But others had different plans. Margaret clenched her fists.
You always bring trouble with you.
David's eyes flashed with regret. I'm here to fix what I can if you'll let me. Emily stepped forward, her resolve growing. We need to uncover the truth. No more secrets. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, as if echoing the storm gathering inside the house. The past was no longer buried, and the family's fragile peace was about to shatter once more. The morning after David's return, a heavy stillness hung over the manor. The night had left behind more questions than answers, and Emily awoke with a sense of dread nesting in her chest. She had barely slept, haunted by the secret still hanging in the air. The envelope of letters remained on the kitchen table, untouched since the night before. David sat alone by the fire, gazing into the flames. Margaret stood near the window, her arms crossed tightly, lips pressed in a straight line. Sarah busied herself with pouring tea, though her hands trembled slightly. Emily broke the silence.
There's more, isn't there?
David looked up.
There is. But I didn't want to speak of it until morning.
Margaret scoffed. Convenient. Ignoring her, David turned to Emily. There's a cellar beneath the garden. Not the wine cellar you know. A second one. Hidden. Emily blinked. A second cellar? David nodded. Your grandfather had it built after the war. That's where the truth lies. Letters, journals, and records.
He kept everything down there.
Sarah dropped the spoon she was holding, and it clattered on the floor.
I thought that was a myth.
No, David said gravely. I helped him build it. The revelation sucked the air out of the room. Emily's mind raced. The garden she had played in as a child, the stone path leading to nowhere, the old rosebush that never bloomed. Suddenly, it all felt like a map she had never learned to read. I'll go there, she said. Today. Margaret raised her voice.
You don't know what you're walking into.
Emily met her gaze.
I'm not afraid.
The garden was damp with morning dew. Emily followed David past the crumbling stone wall and towards a thicket of ivy. He stopped before an iron grate half buried in earthen roots. It's here, he said. With a crowbar, they lifted the grate. A ladder descended into darkness. The smell of earth and age wafted upward, thick and musky. Emily climbed down first, holding a torch David had lit for her. The cellar opened into a wide chamber. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with boxes and folders, some labeled, others not. Dust lay thick, untouched by time. Emily pulled out one folder at random. Inside were receipts for large transactions, dated the year her grandfather had supposedly retired. Another held blueprints of the manor. One marked in red ink showed a separate chamber, hidden behind the east wall. Then she found the letters. Hundreds of them. All addressed to Margaret. I don't understand, Emily murmured. David stepped beside her, holding one open. Your grandfather was documenting everything. Every deal, every bribe, every betrayal. And he trusted Margaret with the whole truth. Emily turned to face the east wall, heart pounding. There's more, she whispered. David placed his hand on the wall, searching. Then with a sharp click, a portion of the stone shifted inward. A narrow passage opened. Emily stepped forward, torch trembling in her hand. Whatever lay beyond that stone wall wasn't just history. It was a reckoning. Emily stepped into the passage, her torchlight slicing through thick cobwebs and settling on stone walls aged by silence. The air grew colder with each step, and her breath came out in puffs. David followed close behind, his footsteps echoing softly, the sound almost devoured by the hush of the hidden tunnel. They descended a narrow stairwell carved directly into the stone, worn smooth by time. At the bottom, an iron door awaited them, rusted at the hinges but still solid. Emily's hand hovered over the handle for a moment before she pressed it down. The door creaked open. The room was no larger than a study, but it felt like a vault. Files were stacked neatly on steel shelves. A single desk sat in the center, upon which rested a leather-bound journal, a fountain pen, and a cracked photograph of a younger Margaret. Emily approached the desk. She picked up the journal, its pages yellowed and ink faded but still legible. She read aloud. October 12, 1968. The agreement has been signed. What we built, what we protected, is now in their hands. We've betrayed one to save many. But can betrayal ever be justified? She turned the pages, each entry more troubling than the last. Mentions of property transfers, hush money, silent investors, and a name that kept appearing, the Whitcomb Trust. David exhaled sharply. They were laundering everything through the trust. That's why the accounts never added up. Emily traced her fingers across the desk. Beneath a thin layer of dust, she saw another name etched into the wood, barely visible under the grime. Is this? She scraped away at the dust with a cloth. The name James Whitcomb appeared, carved crudely with a blade. Her grandfather's name. Suddenly, something clicked in her memory. The sealed envelope from earlier. She pulled it from her coat pocket, opened it slowly, and unfolded the letter inside. It was handwritten in shaky script. The ink had bled slightly, as if written in haste. To my granddaughter. If you are reading this, then the lies have lasted longer than I feared. This house stands because of decisions made in shadows. I loved your grandmother. I loved Margaret. And I failed both. The trust is not what it seems. Neither is Margaret. Forgive me. James. Emily's hand trembled. He loved them both? David nodded solemnly. Margaret wasn't just his confidant. She was something more. They turned to the shelves again, now driven by a darker curiosity. Emily pulled down a box marked 1957 to 1962. Inside were photos, some of her grandfather at formal dinners, others of Margaret beside him. But one photo stopped her cold. It was of a baby. On the back was a note in her grandfather's writing. Eleanor. Born December 12, 1957. Emily stared at the image. That's not my mother's name. No, David said softly. It isn't. Emily's pulse quickened. Then who is Eleanor? David's eyes didn't meet hers. That's the question we've all been avoiding. Footsteps echoed above them. Margaret. She stood at the top of the stairs, illuminated by the pale gray light of day seeping through the open hatch. Her eyes were fixed on Emily, and her face unreadable. You weren't supposed to see this, she said calmly. Emily stepped forward, voice low but steady. Who is Eleanor, Margaret? Margaret descended slowly, her hand brushing the damp wall for balance. You should be careful with questions like that, Emily. Some answers don't belong to you. Emily stood her ground. She's my family, isn't she? A long silence. Margaret's eyes narrowed. She was. Until they buried her name beneath all of this. Emily's heart stopped. What do you mean? But Margaret turned her back and walked further into the vault, towards the rear wall where another file cabinet stood. Come, she said. If you truly want to know, you'll need to see what's hidden behind this drawer. Emily hesitated, the letter still clutched in her hand, and followed. Because beneath the surface of their family tree, roots were tangled in secrets no sunlight had ever touched. Emily watched Margaret's hand slide the drawer open. Inside, a stack of papers tied with a faded ribbon awaited. Margaret pulled them out carefully, revealing documents stamped with official seals, contracts, and handwritten notes. This, Margaret said, voice softer now, is what your grandfather tried to protect, and what nearly destroyed us all. Emily unfolded the top document. It was a will, dated years before she was born, naming Eleanor Whitcomb as the sole heir to the Whitcomb estate. But Eleanor disappeared, Emily whispered. What happened to her? Margaret looked away, her eyes moist. She was hidden, Emily. To protect her from the trust's greed and the family's enemies. She was raised far from here, unaware of her true heritage. David stepped forward, running his fingers through his hair. So you and your grandfather covered this up all these years? To keep Eleanor safe. Margaret nodded. Yes. But it came at a price. The family fractured, trust was broken, and your mother never knew her sister existed. Emily's mind raced, piecing together the fractures in her family's past. The inheritance disputes, the bitter silence between relatives, it all made sense now. Suddenly, Margaret reached for an envelope sealed with wax. She handed it to Emily. This was Eleanor's last message before she vanished again. It might explain why she left. Emily broke the seal, pulling out a folded letter. The handwriting was elegant but shaky. To those I once called family, I carry a secret that could unravel us all. The trust's reach is longer than you think. If I stay, more will be lost. I leave to protect what remains of us. Find the truth. Eleanor. A chill ran down Emily's spine. The words confirmed what she feared. Danger lingered, even now. Margaret's voice trembled. You must decide, Emily. Will you expose the trust, or will you bury the past to protect what little remains? Emily looked at David, then back to the papers. Her heart pounded with determination. We bring everything to light, she said firmly. No more secrets. No more silence. Margaret gave a weary smile. Then prepare yourself. This is only the beginning. As they left the vault, Emily glanced back once more. The shadows that clung to the walls seemed less ominous now. The past was no longer a prison, but a key. Outside, the sky was breaking into dawn. A new chapter for the Whitcomb family had begun.